Today we're going to help build confidence in the quality and the volume of your content. This is pretty obvious, but sometimes you just don't know what to write. Whether that's a block, there's just too much or too little to write about, not really knowing what would impact the readers, what would cause them to take a specific action, or there's just a lot going on, like cultural, political, environmental, or other world events. So we understand how a writer's block could happen. So that's writing a story about a particular topic. Imagine if you had the added filters of writing for a brand or a business, how difficult that would be. It's a little easier when you start with the story of your business. But does your writing or content support the story of your business? That could be any number of key indicators like brand awareness or sales, moving the needle. I'd ask the same question: does your writing or content support the customer in the way that they really need to be supported during their journey? We're talking about the current and the prospective customer. And if you're not answering the question of what's your business and why should I care, then we have a little bit of work to do. For business content that's really supportive of the brand, we take a look at what's inbounds to write about, what really moves the sales and business story forward as opposed to an individual message tied to a product or something more tactical. We look at the values of the company and the culture, the vision, higher level umbrella ideas that are really important, the support for the community, what the business does in terms of stewardship, leadership in the areas of sustainability, talking points that are really resonating right now with consumers of all types. And it's okay to talk about timely and topical stories just so long as you're relevant in those stories and really talking about what makes you unique. You want to stay away from the out-of-bounds topics, the topics that really aren't going to move the needle from a business perspective and are potentially polarizing with your customers. The opposite of a truly credible or authoritative story on sustainability might be greenwashing, claiming that your efforts are really benefiting the environment when they're not. Political topics, so challenging nowadays, probably something that you want to stay away from, as well as previous positions that you haven't talked about. And a good example of this might be religion. Now, you can be a business built on faith, and that's completely inbound. However, if you haven't mentioned that position in the past, and all of a sudden it's a hallmark of your messaging or campaigns, then this is an area you'll want to stay away from because people see through that. They know your track record of talking about or avoiding a topic, and this would appear to be taking a new position for them, and now is not the time to be doing that. Also, joking at somebody else's expense, competitive comparisons, it's just hot water. It's not worth it. The last thing that you want is for the competitor to challenge you on the messaging and potentially raise more of a press shabazzle than anything else. There are a lot of different things that we should avoid. This is just a small list, but the point is to know what's inbounds and out of bounds for your brand specifically and to write to that. And when you do, you're going to be writing with both the brand and the customer in mind. This is a win-win situation for you. It's tough, I have to imagine, as a writer, to be writing to a brand new audience, an audience that you haven't cultivated yet, one with which you don't have rapport or an existing relationship. You might not have momentum. You've got fans and followers, but if you're reaching out to new people, they don't know your writing style, and conversely, you might not know necessarily what makes them tick. So writing as a journalist or another content creator, writing to a new audience is extremely difficult, very challenging. Well, just imagine if you're writing for a brand or a business that's always looking for a new audience. We really tell our clients that they need to try and find 3 new customers for every existing customer that they have right now in order to be sustainable and viable in the future. If you're going after new audiences at that clip, it's extremely challenging, I would imagine, to be creating content that lands with them. So we would ask you, do you have a good idea of your current and prospective customer? As a writer, as a content creator, you have to know exactly to whom you're speaking. What if I were to say, this gentleman on the left is your current customer, the customer who buys from you the most, but all of your content is really geared for the gentleman on the right? Now, aside from the obvious age and other cultural or environmental differences, these people think and act differently. The only thing they may have in common is that they're male, but their attitudes, their approaches, their buying behavior, all of these things are likely very different. So if your content is targeting one, you potentially are missing the other if you don't have both in your sights. And so it's very important as a content creator to be able to flex your style. Not only do you need to know your customer, current and prospective, but you need to be able to cater your work to both of those audiences so that you can cause action with each. And that's a matter of positive reflection of the brand personality, the tone, brand values and benefits, which may be tweaked just very slightly for each one of those audiences. What can we do for you should be the question that you ask, and the filter that's really used for any content that's created. Did I answer the need for my target customer, my current customer? And you need to know how much time, money, emotion they're willing to invest in learning about your product. If you don't know that and you give them too much content or too little content, again, you're not going to be in the consideration set. So it's a matter of understanding the customer very intimately before you create content for them and ask them to engage. Now with COVID, it could be representative of any number of things. This happens to be a pandemic on the global scale, and so it's a bit of an extreme case. But the point is to not only recognize your audiences and flex your style, but be very sensitive to their needs. With COVID, you could say that it's okay to message things like changes to normal business operations, things that have been canceled, services that have been added or interrupted. That's fine. But there are also sensitivities that you should have avoiding joking, because COVID is just not funny. There's nothing funny about it, and that will not land with your customers. When you're overtly promotional, Also, very difficult to connect with a customer who feels like they're being marketed to, where their situation during COVID may be less than a strong one. Again, we don't want to talk about any newly adopted political stands or other positions, and definitely don't want to share internal communications about how you're dealing with the COVID pandemic with an outside consumer. As a content creator, you not only need to know your audience and to be able to flex your style to really meet them where they are and be sensitive to any specific needs, especially around things like COVID-19, but you need to know your medium. You need to understand the media that's communicating the message and how to display your brand within that, how to position it, the words to use, the imagery, the length of copy. You need to be sensitive to how you're communicating your message as well as what you're communicating. And that's anything from social to public relations and hundreds of other vehicles that communicate your brand message. And you win when you provide value for current and prospective customers. Now, that's not saying that you need to communicate the same message to both. Quite the opposite. It's knowing your audience and customizing and personalizing the message where appropriate and where practical to each one of those audience to make them take action or take a position on something that's important to you. It's really difficult to produce content at speed and scale, especially with large numbers of consumers, geographies, the expectations of brands in today's environment as far as transparency and communication. Your job is a tough one, no doubt about it. You're not only putting together the basic building blocks of communications for your company or your brand, but you're also overlaying campaign work, advertising, the day-to-day content creation. You're strapped. You're strapped for time and resources. The expectations are high, and there's not only a fatigue factor on your side, but there's likely a consumer fatigue factor. I've heard this story before. I don't want to hear it again. Your creativity and the well is running dry. No doubt about it. You need a grab bag of content. You need some place that you can dip into on a day-to-day basis for inspiration and for additional content. And we have those tools that we'd like to share with you. We not only tell the story through posts and words and websites, but we tell the story through products and people, the team, the community in which we do business, the broader industry, the context of other competitors and events, places where we sample, opportunities for us to get out in front of people. Those are the marketing vehicles that help us to tell our story. And when you start looking broader at the content ideas that could come from these different sources, you're actually showing the product in use. You're actually telling a relevant story. It's relevant to the context of that audience, broader community and industry. And so your grab bag grows exponentially beyond your four walls, your business, once you start looking outside. You can tell that story through products. This might seem like an easy one. Sure, it's new and seasonal products, do-it-yourself tips. If it's a restaurant, we're talking about new food additions to the menu, new chefs, new recipes, partnerships, pairings, products in use. That mean, this is the most visual that we can get with our product promotion and content creation, especially on social, right? Consumer generated, branding, packaging, advertising, all of these things are fair game, and they create huge amounts of content when done correctly. We don't want to always be on the product side of things, a staged beauty shot. You want to seem a little raw. You want to be product in use, product in hand with your customers. Customers relate to that because they're people too. We're interested in the team members who are behind the product, the owner, the inspiration, the culture, the four walls, as well as the product outside in people's hands, lifestyle photos, videos, product in use. All of these things are fodder for incredible content sharing and also ambassadorship on the part of your customers who show their own use of the product and share it with their friends. First person ambassadorship. And then there's storytelling through community. You could talk about groups that are very enthusiastic about your product or your service, acts of volunteerism from your staff, the network of businesses. There are a lot of opportunities to expand your reach and open the eyes of customers who may not have seen you before because you get third-party credibility and a little bit of love from other people. Storytelling through the industry gives you an opportunity to celebrate the partnerships and collaborations you're working on. It shows your business in the bigger context of your entire market. When you've got competitions and conferences where you're an active part or an active participant, if you get awards or press, all of these things are great opportunities for storytelling on behalf of your brand. And then there are events. The promotions and sponsorships, from a COVID perspective, it's a little challenging right now, but we'll be back. Anniversaries, celebrations, holidays, and observations. Speaking of which, we've got an example from one of our clients, craft beverage producer, and we just identified some National Day holidays for additional fodder for content. And some of these aren't going to be relevant, but you can make your own events out of these. You can speak to how your brand either relates to this or counters it. It's just different ideas. But when you have a calendar like this, it helps you come up with scheduled items as well as allowing for real-time content posting. And you win because you have balanced content that connects at many levels. But how do you know that it's really landing? What's the measurement? There's so much noise out there right now. It's hard to really see clearly the effect, the impact of your content. But your company is telling you as a content creator, we need to know when and how and where to invest. They're looking for accountability and reporting from you at all levels. Not only the story that's created, but the marketing on owned vehicles and even the advertising on paid channels. We use a tool called Sprout Social, and one of our clients, Common House Ale Works, they agreed to allow us to show some of their screens, just the level of detail that they use to listen to what's happening in the industry and then position their brand in that context, really owning a niche. So they listen to their competitors. This is 28 days of their competitive set. And what they do is they learn from that and they position their calendar of posts in order to counter that, in order to, again, own some storytelling within that. Again, the same tool, Sprout Social, and our client Common House Ale works, with an active posting schedule, which also allows for real-time posting for events and posts in the moment. There's also the tracking tools that most people have access to: Google Analytics, social campaigns, integrations. We need to take advantage of this low-hanging fruit to really paint a complete picture, a dashboard, if you will, for the marketing team, the internal folks, the owners and managers of the company. Because monthly reporting could look like this. Again, our Common House example where these Facebook posts were the most engaging. And what can we learn from this? We learn how to optimize our calendar to be the most engaging. It creates efficiencies with our teams, gives us an opportunity to learn what our competitors are doing and position ourselves within that, owning different areas and niches that they themselves can't claim credibly. Our challenge to you today is agree on content topics, match your style to your audience, come up with creative sources, and then optimize for high performance. Following these steps will help you build a high-performing content marketing team internally. My name is Scott Colby. I'm an advisor for Market Your Craft, and we thank you for viewing our presentation today.